So I just wanted to give a little bit of a background as to what brings us here today. You know, this is, has been a long time coming in terms from inception until now, and for those of you who have been around, even prior to my time here in 2017, you recall that we had some gang-related violence, organized crime, that actually resulted in the, included a homicide of a high-profile gang member in our community. Early on, we started to get information that information that there was the possibility of a Throttle Lockers motorcycle club setting up in our community to establish a clubhouse. So as is one of our strategic priorities is to address the organized crime issues, and certainly on the heels of the homicide and some of the other gang-related and organized crime-related issues that were happening in our community, it became one of our priorities to prevent the establishment of a Throttle Lockers clubhouse in our community. Certainly they were interested in expanding their presence and control, and our priority was to try and to prevent that from happening. My predecessor, Superintendent Brad Mueller at the time, you know, was adamant that we get this project going, and with the support of the Targeted Enforcement Unit, and then Staff Sergeant Simon Pillay, who had investigative oversight of the overall project, began this adventure. This is always and has been a threat in our community, that being organized crime. So we do have to take steps on occasion to try and address that, and that's you know, we fortunately had the support and the ability to turn our attention to CFSEU BC for some support, and as the scope and breadth of our investigation continued to grow, we were able to reach out to CFSEU, who were able to step in and give us some assistance and take the ball and run with it from there. It's very much in line with our priorities for our detachment and our community. You know, it's important that we let the folks know that we are taking steps to address organized crime and violence in our community, which is often what accompanies the presence. So with that, you know, the only other thing I'd like to tie into that is that we've also gotten some support now from the federal government with having the city recently received some grant funding to reduce gun and gang violence in our community. That's not tied to police resources, but it's important to know that we're all levels on the provincial level trying to address it as well. And the use of PTEP funding, the provincial government has also stepped in to contribute not only to this, but some of the other projects that we've worked in. So we're very grateful. It does take pressure from us and having that support of CFSEU. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over for some more details on this to Superintendent Duncan Pound. Thank you.
And one of the core mandate responsibilities that we have is to assist communities, police and jurisdictions around the province, and to provide additional resources and an expertise in terms of investigating organized crime investigations. So as Superintendent Leckie referenced, we also became aware that back in 2017, 2018, the Throttle Lockers were intending to set up a clubhouse here. And obviously from the preventative point of view, from the organized crime picture point of view, a hugely important step to try and take enforcement action to prevent that establishment from taking place. So we were able to enter into a joint forces operation with the Kamloops detachment, and kudos to their investigators who started this file and worked its way up to a point where they could then engage with us, and then allow us to bring in some of the more sophisticated police techniques that allowed us to gather a significant amount of evidence and take an investigation to the point where we were able to conduct search warrants, seize some of the items that you'll see before you here, not only Outlaw Motorcycle Club paraphernalia, but you'll see the drugs, which included methamphetamine, cocaine, fentanyl. You see the firearms there. Obviously, firearms violence is a huge priority for the province and for CFSEU BC. And it's an opportunity for us to work together to take all these drugs off the street. And then the announcement today obviously signals in every police investigation, one of the most important milestones is having pulled together all of the evidence that we have and providing it to our partners at Crown Council, that we reach charge approval. So we're very pleased to announce today that our partners with Public Prosecution Service of Canada have approved a number of different charges, and they're laid out against the 3 individuals in the press release before you, which include trafficking of fentanyl, trafficking cocaine, trafficking methamphetamines. So important charges, important next step in the process, and we're continuing at CFSU BC to guide this through the court process, and we'll work very closely with Crown Counsel as they take on that next challenge. And I'll just finish by saying that one of the important things that Superintendent Leckie mentioned, we are guided by at CFSU BC as part of our mandate to help steer the ship in terms of the organized crime strategy for the province. We help manage the provincial funding, which they put into our provincial tactical enforcement priorities, known as PTEP. And that's an opportunity not only for CFSU to assist with direct resources and subject matter expertise, but to provide funding to police of jurisdiction in order to help them get to the next level and to go up the ladder in terms of charging significant organized crime targets. But overall, a huge success on this file. We're glad that it's reached this next step, and we're looking forward to continued good news as we go through the court process.
As has been our practice and our experience in the past, it's not uncommon that we find that these are, so that you're referring to a shooting that was reported, and I think it's reasonable to assume that there may be a connection. It has all the hallmark markings of that kind of behavior, but we don't know yet. So hopefully we'll get more information that we'll be able to share in the future, but at this point it's very early, and we'll just continue on and hopefully but it is the type of behavior that led to this project that we're resolving today, you know, and it's our continued effort as a priority to try and address that which underlies most of our shootings, homicides, anything that has happened over time. And we've had a bit of a lull in activity for some time, so it was a little bit troubling to see that last night, but that's why it just shows the importance of the collaboration and the relationships that we have, not only with CFSU BC and some of our partner agencies, but also with the city who is, you know, giving us the resources and the support to be able to get this job done.
Yeah, maybe I'll just build on that because it expands some of perhaps the sort of understanding of what the Provincial Tactical Enforcement Priorities program does, and the province sort of mandated it, so now every police jurisdiction within the province contributes intelligence. So they'll identify organized crime threats within their particular police of jurisdiction area. But what it allows CFSU and then Kamloops and all of our other contributing partners to do is compare notes and combine intelligence. So I know we've spoken at length at different press conferences with respect to the fact that organized crime groups don't respect municipal boundaries or even provincial boundaries or international boundaries. So I think one of the keys is always to say, are we in touch with everyone? Are we sort of collating that intelligence and understanding the bigger picture trends? So to your answer, yeah, we do have an understanding of within British Columbia what the sort of different power struggles would be. And then what we can do as CFSU BC is provide some assistance and insight to Kamloops while they provide the same insight because they know Kamloops better than anyone. But we can have that picture of where the ebbs and flows may be with respect to organized crime. So I mean, in a general, like very high level view, what happens is puppet clubs, they're essentially a lower level club that feeds up into a larger entity like the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. So like any sort of business venture where you try and establish sort of an entry level working shop, and then a larger group can come in, get profits from that, perhaps have a larger presence. So going back to what Superintendent Leckie and I were mentioning earlier on, by taking this enforcement action against these key figures who are trying to set up the clubhouse for the throttle lockers, you then prevent the establishment of that sort of clubhouse, that shop of business for an organized crime entity. So it's a significant deterrent effect to be able to stop that before it even gets established. Because obviously, like anything else, once it's established, it's more challenging to then deal with it and take enforcement action. When we're dealing with criminal organizations, what we try and do now is rather than say, let's put a name to it, John Doe, we'll try and say, here's a network. So if you have a Hells Angels network that's trying to expand and increase their profits and their criminal presence, if you can take out their lower level operations, then you're impacting their overall network and their ability to do more in terms of selling fentanyl, I don't have to go into the dangers right now, the opioid crisis that we're dealing with here in BC, across Canada and internationally. So any kind of step you can take to limit that ability to distribute those drugs and keep them off the streets and you know, the more vulnerable sectors of our communities that are impacted by those is a definite win for law enforcement. And that's what this was today.
One of the important things to keep in mind with these types of investigations is the complexity. What I want the public to know and the citizens of Kamloops is that even though you don't always see or hear at the time that there's stuff happening, you don't always know what's happening. In fact, more often than not, you don't. You see the outward facing end of that is the violence. But it's the work that's happening behind the scenes, and just to kind of draw attention to our targeted enforcement unit and some of the other units that we have here and the work that they do, which is really outstanding. And a lot of that work, the heavy lifting, so to speak, is taking place throughout the year when everyone's home sleeping in their beds. These guys and women are working hard and behind the scenes to try and keep a lid on things. So it's not just the investigation, it's the subsequent disclosure practices and time that takes. And especially when you're talking about advanced investigative techniques, it really does expand the need and the time taken to be able to bring this through to charge approval. So that's just part of the additional pressure. But I do want you to know that I don't want folks to lose sight of what we're really we're trying to address here. We have an opioid crisis in our communities. We have, at a time when we talk about the issues of, and I'm going to ask Mr. Mayor to speak later on if he wants to speak on this issue, but things related to bail reform or our ability to address offenders at lower levels. I'm not talking about these higher level folks, but who are walking free right now, waiting their turn in trial. But you know, to be able to address the low-level things, because we have people dying at record rates on our city streets and throughout our province. And what are we doing to address that? And this is stuff that we can do. We're trying to address it at higher levels. Certainly our ability to address it at the street level is far more challenging today than it was maybe a month or two ago. But I can tell you that let's not lose sight of the victims and their families and who's paying the price. Because at the end of the day, yes, we're police, we like to catch bad guys, but at the end of the day, we have people who are losing their lives, and we don't want to lose sight of the fact that having these partnerships is excellent, but we do need to do more to support all the other issues that we're dealing with in our community related to mental health and those who are preyed upon by these gangsters who are leveraging their weaknesses for their financial gain. So I don't want to lose sight of that. It's an important thing to remember as we have these conversations, and it's something that I try to remind our investigators about, so that you know, our vulnerable people are being looked after, in addition to the health supports that need to be in place for mental health and addictions and so on. But this is just one avenue in how we take steps to address these issues in our community.
Well, first of all, thanks very much, Sid and Superintendent Pound. It's my pleasure to be here today, but it's a difficult day, right? First of all, I want to commend the women and men of the Kamloops detachment, both on the watch and on the special details, because they're doing this kind of work every day. And it's when they bump into a case like this that is more complex, larger, that the Combined Forces Special Enforcement Unit comes into play. And I think Superintendent Pound talked to you about exactly how complex these investigations get. Superintendent Leckie mentioned former Superintendent Brad Mueller, and Brad was here when I started as mayor, and Simon Pellet, who started this investigation. That's a long time ago, and that I think is indicative of how complex these kinds of investigations are and how important they are. But you know, it may be small in the overall scheme of international drug seizures, but for Kamloops this is big. And what you see in front of you represents safer streets for Kamloops, but more importantly, the fentanyl that's before you has been seized, and that has quite frankly saved lives here in Kamloops. So I'm regularly in contact with other mayors in and around British Columbia through the BC Urban Mayors Caucus, and we are constantly speaking with the Solicitor General of British Columbia and the Attorney General of British Columbia about our concerns for the safety in the streets of these cities. And I think, if you look at Kelowna, Kamloops, Prince George, Nanaimo, Victoria, those that are around the Lower Mainland, these are areas where you have to keep the defenses up because organized crime knows no boundary. They don't know where the Kamloops detachment stops and starts. But when we have opportunities through the E-Division and the coordination of other police forces in British Columbia to bring in the BC ESU, that's going to help us in terms of our abilities to thwart organized crime and gangs and gun violence here in Kamloops and beyond. So I just wanted to say thank you to both of you and the women and men that work for you that brought this to this stage. It's not done. And as indicated, the matter is before the courts, and we hope for a good result there. Thank you.